and Commissioner Ekstrom.
Here.
Thank you. So we do have a couple of folks on the meeting. If they have any public comment, if they'd like to please raise their hand. Okay, so I don't see that anybody has a comment right now. Let's see if I can advance my slide here. There we go. So we do have one piece of old business, and that's the nomination and selection of a chair, vice chair. I only have a couple of folks that have volunteered at this point. I'll send another email out after this meeting to see if we have anybody else. And I'll put that on the next workshop agenda, which is on October 26th. So the next section is the district scenario modeling tool, and Kate from Flow Analytics is going to take over. So if she wants to share her screen.
Yep, I can do that. Yeah, let's share my screen. Here we go. All right. Welcome to the workshop, second workshop, everyone. Glad to see you all again. So I'm going to try to keep this under an hour, but we've got some, kind of tools to go through, website to go through, but I wanted to start with a bit of a recap just in case folks are watching, this session for the first time and missed the first one, or just kind of want to hear it again so they can get used to this process, which is, it's not new, but it is a 10-year-old process. So we are here on the timeline, moving right along. So now we're in these kind of working group workshop sessions for the next couple of months. And so I just wanted to show folks where we are in the timeline. We did launch the district scenario modeler last week, and we will be going through that today as well. So first, I wanted to do an overview of redistricting and then do a tour of the new website page. So I did walk through the tool itself last time, but now it's kind of in context inside this website page. So I wanted to make sure that everyone understood how that whole page works, and then how to copy a map that someone might have made into their survey, and then how to submit the survey. I'm going to walk through all of that. And if folks, I'm seeing a few folks that aren't on mute, if you want to mute yourselves, just in case a dog barks in the background or something. If a dog barks here, it's my dog. So I will try to make sure that doesn't happen. So overview for everyone, the redistricting process, we're looking for population balanced, contiguous, definitely in compliance with all laws, not favoring or disfavoring a protected class or political party, should be as compact as possible. So they should really look like, kind of regions of the city, should preserve communities of interest. So that's where we're trying to get public feedback as well, and your feedback about your communities. And then they should preserve existing administrative or natural boundaries, such to the extent we can keep current district boundaries, or, rivers, highways, things like that. So things that look logical. We covered this last time, but just as a refresher for folks, we had in 2010, or with the 2010 census data and the existing districts, the range between the population in the highest population district, which was District 2, and the lowest population district, which was District 5, was 6.5%, which is great. It's under 10%. There's not much variation between any of the districts, and that's the most. So if we keep the same districts and look at now population, that range goes up to 33.8% between the highest and the lowest. So we see a big jump in District 3. And then we have District 4, which, stayed about the same, lost a little bit of population, but the other ones jumped up so much, you've really got that big range between 3 and 4. So that's what we're going to try to bring back to the center by moving the boundaries of the districts. All right. And just a quick, look at the data for race and ethnicity for the city. We are aware of the kind of data for Hispanic and Latino residents of the city in the census, and we ran an analysis to make sure that we didn't have to have, or didn't have to have, a majority minority district. And so it looked like we might be able to make a majority minority district in the city. So that leads us to investigate further and, geographically, can we put a bunch of blocks together, census blocks together that are at that level of around 10,000 people total, but have more than 50% Hispanic or Latino population inside that district. And we've looked at that information and we weren't able to make that district because the population is too dispersed throughout the city. And so I can talk about that more later when we're looking at the map, but we have been looking into that, and it doesn't look like we can make a majority minority. That doesn't mean we shouldn't keep communities of interest together that consider themselves all one community. So just a note on, whether we're able to do that. It doesn't look like we can because the geographic range is too high. I think the population of the district would have to be 16,000 people or something to have that percentage, which is too high for a district. So the current district map, this is the overview. This is what it looks like population-wise, the difference in population from that ideal. So 3, 1, and, this is the difference in population from the last time. So 3 went way up. And then, 1, 2, and 5 all went up, and then 4 went down a little bit in that time period. And if we look at what this looks like on a block level, the blocks that are in blue, and these are our like literal building blocks for making the districts, the blocks that are in blue went down in population over the last 10 years, or between the two censuses, I should say. And then the blocks in yellow and then orange and that darker orange went up in the last 10 years. So you can see how it's mostly light blue to light yellow, which means somewhere between lost 50 and gained 100, in that range, which is normal, kind of variation. But when you look at something like this area, to me, it looks like there's a development there that happened, in the last 10 years. And then areas that lost population, that these might be areas that we look at to see, what's going on there. But that means that these districts will have to be, 3 is going to have to be smaller because it has more people. And then other districts that lost more people, like I think 4, will have to be a bit bigger. Or just changed altogether. So we have this redistricting, sorry, I'm like moving people's faces out. Okay, there we go. I'm trying to like look at the group while I'm doing this. So we have this kind of redistricting 101 example that I wanted to show everyone and walk through. Some of this might be very obvious, some of it might be very new to people. So I figured we just kind of walk through this example district and what somebody might do when they're making a map. So we have this example county Z. So in this case we're looking at a county, but similar for a city. So we have district 1 has a lower population. It's 19,000 people under. So we would need to enlarge that area to include more people. So somebody says, okay, great. I'm going to look at, District 3 has the same amount over as District 1 has under. So let's just trade, a group of people from one to the other, and then we'll be good. We'll be balanced. It'll be perfect. So this, person decides to clip this piece of District 3 and send it to District 1. And I'm not going to ask the room. You can probably understand why this would not be a good idea, because we need to make contiguous boundaries. So you can't have District 1 and then another piece of District 1 up here. Okay, so that's not going to work. What if we connected it by taking this piece of, piece of District 4 and connected District 3 down to District 1, and then took this population? Let's just do that. Let's take some of 3 and make this little cord, this tiny little piece, and connect it to District 1 so it's technically touching. But we're not going to do those either. So that's, not compact to have something that's like extending out like a little arm and reaching another place, technically contiguous. but looks a little shady. Like, why are we grabbing that piece from there? Okay, so that doesn't work. So District 4 could take population from District 3, and it's a little bit of a cascading effect. So you could take population from District 3 to District 4. Great, contiguous, they're both still compact, perfect. And then, but, oh no, this purple area is a community of interest. So, we were thinking, oh, this is great, it's the right amount of people. Let's just grab these folks and put them in District 4. But the other thing that we need to try in this process is to not break up a community just because it fits the numbers the best. So let's try to keep that whole community together, but District 3 has a really high population here, so we do have to move people out. So let's move the whole community out, not half of it, and keep half in another area. All right, so we've got the community of interest, we're contiguous, compact, and so now we're going to take a piece of District 4, moving down to District 1, but it kind of follows these weird block lines, and might be completely balanced, but it's not really an understandable boundary. It doesn't follow a road. It doesn't follow a river like here. It doesn't follow a main street or something like that, or a park boundary, something that makes sense. So we would like to look for something that looks like this, where you take that whole area that is east of the river and send it to District 1, and it's kind of this contiguous looking area. So great, we did it. So this is the overall range is 6.6% in this case. So I just wanted to go through this example to show folks that it might not be just trading between two districts. You might need to kind of move things around almost in a circle sometimes to get everything to match up. So that's why we're doing this whole process. It's not an easy process to figure out the best moves to make. But these are just some principles to keep in mind when you are working on maps or thinking about communities that should say in certain districts. Okay, so I am going to go over to the new website page here. Can everyone see my screen? I want to make sure I'm sharing yeah, okay, thank you. So this new page, it links over from the redistricting portal. So now we have this Take Me to the Map tool button on the page. This page has been up since June or end of June. And we still have the, how to submit comments or questions is here on this page. But now we have this green Take Me to the Map tool button. So that takes you here, and it allows the commissioners and the public, we want the public to also participate and submit maps and comments. And we have a user guide here, and this will open a website that has a lot of information in it. So it identifies all the different pieces of the tool. If you really feel like diving into it, there's a whole user guide. The community survey is, if you don't want to draw a whole district map, you can take the community survey and say, this is my community, this is my neighborhood. Maybe last time we were split into two districts and we don't want to be anymore, or we've been in this district forever and we want the whole neighborhood to stay in one district still and not be split. So either of that, type of information, folks can go to the community survey and fill in that survey. If you need to know your district, you can click on this link and it will take you to the City of Lincoln map for what district you're in now. And then you can draw a community boundary as well. And if you click here, you'll see a little video about how to make a community boundary in the map, but it's optional. You can really just describe it. We just really want information from the community we want to hear from people about areas that they, this area we'd like to have one representative and not be split between two people. And then technical support, there's a survey for that. If you're having an issue with the tool or you can't figure something out, please go there and fill out that survey. We try to get some information from you And then if you want us to reach you, you can give us your email, and that goes to me and a couple other people. So if you need technical support, or if any member of the public does, you can fill out that form and we will get back to you usually within the day. All right, so that's kind of the website. And then I wanted to walk through, I know we walked through this tool before, hopefully this looks familiar. But we, we've kind of added, if I scroll down, we've got the tool here, but we also have this way to submit a map with this, couple of questions about your map. So just trying to let folks know, don't, scroll down to complete the survey and submit it. And then that comes to us and in the city, and we will use that information while we are making scenario maps. So we just want, this is a way for us to gather information about the city that might not be a GIS layer yet. All right, so I'm going to walk through the tool again because it is a lot of things on the screen. And I had just emailed Gwen about half an hour ago that we were going to have a way to save a map and come back to it. And we do, but I didn't get it up on the website yet. We just need to test one more thing. So once that's up, Gwen, I will let you know, and maybe you can get it out to the rest of the commissioners. But that would be, that would be great. So we've
thank you.
This close, but my coworker had to go pick up his kids. So, so we have on this tool, kind of the left side here, total population of the city, number of districts, and then the ideal population. So just the thing that you're aiming for any of these districts. You can choose the streets or satellite base map. I like streets myself. It's a little easier to look at. But if you're looking for your house, or you're trying to draw, or look at a specific community, the satellite view might be helpful. You can always view existing boundaries, but most folks are going to be here in the draw new boundaries, area. So I've set it up so that we already, are looking at, when you come to this page, you're looking at the existing boundaries. So this is the existing categorization, and that's why it's off. And so we can also, if you wanted to look at a particular district to start with, you can filter by districts, if it helps you clear up the map a little bit. And then if you wanted to look at citizen voting age population, that's what we look at when we're trying to do a majority minority district. So if you wanted to investigate that, you can change this kind of selection detail here to citizen voting age population. That data comes from the American Community Survey. So it's the 2015 to 2019 American Community Survey data, which is, a modeled amount. So the census is actually, people filled out, and then the American Community Survey, the surveys are done throughout the country over the course of a year, and then they kind of tabulate all of those and then come up with estimates for blocks where they don't have data. So we do have this information in here, but generally, because we're trying to balance for total population, you'll generally leave it on total population. These pie charts, if you remember, you kind of hover over them and they will highlight the district for you. So District 1, and then you can see the race and ethnicity breakdown for each of the districts in the pie chart pieces around the circle. And then over here, you can see how much they are over or under where they need to be. So District 3 is over by 1,700 people. So it's 17% over where it should be. And so this will update as you kind of move blocks from one district to another. These will update and show you your progress, and the total deviation will also update. So if you get under 10, you will know you've got a pretty good map. So you don't need to have it under 10 to submit a map. It's actually hard to get it under 10. But if you can, try to get it under 10. But if you also just want to, say you wanted to redraw the districts for districts 1 and 2 and leave 3, 4, and 5 alone, just for your map example. And then in the survey, you can say, I didn't edit 3, 4, or 5, but 1 and 2, I would like them to look like this. for this reason. So there's ways to submit the maps without having to do the whole thing, as long as you explain in your survey, what's important about your map. Okay, and I know this is a bit of a recap, but it is a lot of a tool. So hopefully this is helpful. And then if you wanted to filter blocks, like I said, if you wanted to filter blocks by Hispanic or Latino in this city, you can use this scroller here. So you can see, like, I'm at 61%, so that's very high. But if you go to 20%, then you can see how many blocks have 20% or more residents that are reporting to the census that they are Hispanic or Latino. So it's, you can kind of see geographically, you can kind of see where this is in the city. You might start thinking about communities that are in those areas. But again, because it's fairly distributed throughout, what is currently District 1 and 2, we aren't able to consolidate into one district that would allow that group to be more than 50%. So we did look into that, but you can still, try to work on keeping communities together that are self-reporting in those communities. Everybody. So blocks by population category, this is only helpful if you're interested in, these are blocks that have 500 or more people in them, which is kind of high for a block. And you can see that one for District 3 in the yellow. That's because it gained a lot of population over the last 10 years. And that's probably a candidate for a block that's going to be split in the future because it has a lot of population in it now and it didn't before. So if you're interested in blocks, you can also see there's 86 blocks with 0 people in them. And so, it just might be interesting for you to look at that, but there's nothing that you have to do with these. You can just kind of check them out. Communities of interest. This is where we did add in more homeowners associations. So before, I think we only had 4, and there was a comment, I think, from one of the commissioners about adding in more, and we had more to put in. So this is in here now. So if you hover over any of these, some of them are small, but still, you don't want to break them up. So if it has a green check mark here, it means it's currently not split between 2 districts. So, Courtyards at Lincoln Crossing is 1 block. Lincoln Crossing is this whole area, and it is currently split between 2 districts. So it's just, a way of seeing an X means it's, split between districts 3 and 4, and you can see it in the table there. What's the split, and so it gives you that information. If you go to Sun City, which I think is the biggest one, it is split between 2 districts. So you can see that. So as you're making edits there on the left to the map, the HOAs, those green check marks and the red X's will change as well to see hey, did I get all of Sun City in there in one district or not? So that would change. We also have school districts in here, in just generally doesn't have to be something that you definitely draw districts by, but may be helpful to see where those school district attendance areas are. And we have the priority low income area as well, which is split currently between districts 1 and 2. So that might be an area where, you incorporate that into 1 district instead of 2, just something to look at. Okay. Anytime you make a selection over here, the selection detail will update. So that's kind of helpful if you just want to see the demographics of something that you have selected on the map. Okay, and that's the whole tool itself. So I think I want to go through, yes, how to copy the share link and submit the survey. Just making sure I'm covering everything. So if I wanted to make a map, now I'm sitting here and I'm going to make a map. So District 1 has 1,000 too many people, and District 2 has 1,000 too few people. So I'm going to zoom in on the map and go here and select this selection tool. I like using the lasso because you can draw a shape around what you want to select. So I'm just going to click and drag, and you can see it's selecting these in a little black outline. If you ever selected something that you were like, I selected the wrong thing. Just kind of click off the map and it unselects it for you. So you can always undo that. But I'm going to say this neighborhood I have selected, and it's 1,691 people you can see down here. So that's too many. If I was going to move that from District 1 to District 2, all of a sudden District 2 would be over by 500 people. So that's probably too many people. So you can see you get like a little bit of a hint there. So what if I just took this side of the road and I don't want that one. Now we've got 1,100 people. So maybe that's pretty good. And I grabbed this one by this side of the road, which, you know, I didn't want this one. You can always use the control button on your keyboard and click, and it will turn it off. So you can control and click to turn something on or turn something off, or you can always go off to the side, unselect, and just reselect with the tool again. So now I'm at 1,119. Sounds great. Maybe I've solved District 1 and 2. So if I hover over any of these blue areas, what I want to do is remove these blocks from District 1. So I need to unassign them from District 1. So I'm going to do that. So now they're gray. And you can see they're down here as unassigned 1,100 people have no district at the moment. So I'm going to hover over these again and then add blocks to District 2. And we've got this in red, remove blocks from their current district before assigning them to a new one. They can only have one at a time. And that's just kind of the way that the tables work behind the scenes. All right, so we got that updated. And now 2 is only 176 over and 1 is 64 under. And the total deviation didn't update, and I will look into that because that should have gone down because we got a lot closer. So let me make a note about that deviation updating. And that's probably because we were trying to add the save for you. So we've got 1 and 2 much closer. And so if I like this map and I'm done editing, and this is what I wanted to do, then I will go down here to this share button in the corner. So I'm going to grab this share, and where it says current view, which is my, the original view is the original districts. Current view is what I want to show, myself, the analysts that are working on it. So you're going to click this link and hit copy, Control C, or right click and copy. So now this is my, I made this map. This is my map that I made, and I want to show people. I want it to be taken into consideration in this process. I've changed this area to District 2, and I like it, and I think that that's great. So I would come down here, and this is again how commissioners and the public would add this map, get this map into the process. I don't actually live in any of these districts, but I will choose one. And then you can always go to this link if you need to figure out which district you live in, and then you can tell us about your map, which helps us, understand why you made the changes that you did. So I'm just going to say brings District 1 and District 2 into better. And this could be, if I lived there, I could say, I've always thought the neighborhood across the street should be part of my district. That could be in the description. And so any information just helps us understand, why this map is important, why that was drawn that way. And then if you do Control V for paste or right click and paste, this is the map link that you got from the share up here for your specific map that you created. So paste that here. And then there's even a little how to find the share link video in case, you get down here and you're like, wait, where is the share? It's in the bottom corner of the map. And then you hit submit. And that's how you submit a map. So that's how you use this page. So I just wanted to give kind of a walkthrough top to bottom of this page. And before I go on, maybe I'll stop.
Kate, would you show the share button one more time on the map there?
Yes. Yep, it is. Let me just move everyone's video. Here we go. It's right here in the corner where it says share. You can also share it with your friends. But this is how we know, what map you created. So it basically takes a snapshot of this map that you made. And if you click on this, you grab for the current view, which is the default. If you've made edits, you grab this link here. So what we are, before I take questions, actually, I'll just say what we are working on, which we almost had done, and I really wanted to show you, was under here, we're going to add a way for you to save your map. So if you're working in the map and mailman comes to the door or you need to run out for something, if you come back, browsers tend to refresh pages sometimes. So we've heard from a couple of people, like, I was working on a map, I just left my browser where it was and I came back and it had refreshed the map. So, we're working on a way to create kind of a static, not a static, but a link that saves that snapshot for you. And so that will be down here at the bottom. So we'll let you know when that's live. It should be tomorrow. We were trying to get it in for this session today. But that's only if you needed to come back to your map. I think for the most part, especially for, we're San Diego County is one of our clients as well, and they have 3 million people. So people that are making, their district maps are dealing with so many blocks. You definitely need to be able to save the map and come back to it and look at it again. But I think what we're hoping is you will come, to this page, work on the map and kind of submit it all in one go. But we do know that stuff happens and you might get pulled away from your computer. So we are trying to have that link ready for you tomorrow. So then anytime you make changes, you just generate, a snapshot of that map. And then anytime you open that link, you can see that map where you just left off. So that will be added in, like I said, hopefully tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to pause and see if there's any questions about this, about the website page or the tool itself.
I don't have any questions, but I have a comment more so. I know when you're talking about looking for the minority majority. I mean, I grew up in Lincoln all my life, so I'll just tell you that Lincoln, unlike a lot of cities, the Hispanic population is throughout the city. It's not like in certain cities where it's South Sac or
Right.
East LA or East Oakland. That's kind of been, especially if you look at the traditional part of town, the ABC, as I call them, the ABC streets and the 1, 2, 3, avenues. Yep. I mean, there's 1 or 2 Hispanic families on every street. So unless there's a way of keeping like the old block and configuring it, and I don't know that because I haven't messed around. I just wanted to kind of just throw that out there that there may not be a way of doing it and fitting all these things. And it's because of that uniqueness and that we've never had really a segregated city.
Right.
Like I said, and I grew up in Lincoln.
Yeah, that's what we found, where we were trying to see if it was, technically possible to get a contiguous group of blocks to have a 50% Hispanic, population while also keeping that percentage, low, and we weren't able to do it because it's like geographically distributed throughout the city. So yeah, but it is something that, if you look at districts, if I go back here to existing boundaries instead of my map example, districts 1 and 2, if this is the area you're kind of talking about here, you could see instead of splitting districts 1 and 2 top and bottom, you could split them left and right. These are kind of things to play around with and still, be able to keep contiguous areas, but see if the population works in that example. Thank you.
But Kate, this is Commissioner Alcott. If you've already tried this and you're a professional, then we shouldn't waste our time trying to do it again, should we?
Correct. So I think you don't have to worry about creating a majority minority district because we weren't able to do that. But if there are communities within these districts that are potentially currently split or they don't want to be split, having Hispanic communities stay within a district, it doesn't have to be a majority, but if there's a community of interest that should be, considered within one district, that's something else that you should be looking at. But yeah, we're not able to do a majority minority district.
So Kate, can I just mention here that, you know, if you're interested in trying it out, you can, and put test in your comments so that we know it's not a real map. But, you know, if the commissioners would like to do that, or even a member of the public on your first try, you could, you know, just say in your comments what you're trying to do and make sure you put test in there. And then we'll let you know if that works. And also, if you'd like one-on-one support, we can do that. We can set up a meeting with commissioners one-on-one. And then hopefully during one of these workshops, we're going to try and do some hands-on with the modeling tool, and you know, either in a big room with a few laptops or a room with computers if we're able to. But I don't know which meeting that will be just yet.
Yeah, that's a great point. Definitely, you know, we test this out. Gwen's tested it out. So there's a few test, you know, things that are in our survey responses at the moment. And that's great. We'll just, you know, for the purposes of the analysis, we will ignore those. But if folks want to practice creating a map, practice grabbing that share link. If it's a test, you don't even have to put your real first and last name. Just as long as you're in here, tell us about your map. You can say just test, you know, you don't even have to say anything else, or, you know, you could type some other stuff if you want to, but then we will just kind of ignore those entries, and it allows you to, you know, submit a survey and try it out.
I have a question.
Yep.
I started playing with this thing when it first came out, and I was one of those individuals that walked out of the room, came back, and there was nothing there. Everything looking like this. So you're planning in the next few days of we can be able to incrementally save our work, because otherwise there is not much sense in going through all this work if you within 5 minutes it disappears.
Yeah, so we will have under this table here, under the selection detail table, you know, what you'll do is you'll make a map over here. You'll grab that share link and it will generate a link for you that's, you know, it's just like a static link. So as long as you grab that link and, you know, save it somewhere, then that is your, you know, progress so far will be that map. So we'll include, I wanted to demo it here tonight, and we weren't able to get it completely done before, and I wanted to make sure it was working every time, so no one lost anything. So I will, you know, send out information about that with kind of a, you know, a step-by-step for how to use it. But then you will be able to know that you've kind of grabbed a capture of that map, and you can start back again whenever you want to.
Well, the reason why I'm commenting is I just kind of recommend that we just hold off anybody that wants to really start playing with it until we have that feature established and in good operating order. That's just my comment.
That's not a bad idea. So if folks want to use it and, you know, not spend too much time with it, but get familiar with it and submit tests, or just, you know, make maps and you don't have to submit them. But if you want to submit them, as long as it says test, before, you're right, you know, before getting to a point where you're going to spend a lot of time on it, and you don't want to lose your work. But if you do want to play with the tool and submit maps, you know, just get used to how it works, and get used to, you know, removing, you know, an area from one district and adding it to another. All that stuff, like learning the mechanics of it is, you know, good to do. But yeah, I agree. Like once we get that save in there, you'll feel a lot more secure. Your map isn't going to go away.
A couple other real quick questions. What, in your experience, how do we deal with future annexations? If there's something on the drawing table at this point, as well as we have some significant projects going on up out of 193 and then off of 12 Bridges in the Kaiser area and all that. How far up do you reach time-wise to pick up these projects? Because they're going to be very significant for this community.
Yeah, so for redistricting legally, you have to use the census data. So those new developments wouldn't be incorporated into redistricting until 2030. So that's, that's how often the census happens. So that's when, all the new population would go into those new developments. And then in 2030, you'd redraw the districts again around, that new population.
But we would have these people actually residing here before Christmas.
So they would go into the adjoining district.
Oh, annexation, sorry, I'm
Yes.
understanding now, not new developments, got it, yeah.
May I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so if you're saying we should play around with this, I would imagine it's for the reason, or it's to get used to using the tool to try to do what we're going to do later when we could save it. And in that case, we should be paying attention to, I want you to remind us, because I think some of us have a little bit of, we need some clarity as far as total deviation targets, which I think that's clear, but you can remind us. And then the priorities, because we keep bringing up, the racial populations and HOAs. And I'd like to know how to weigh those things in priority.
Yeah, so it's definitely, and I think I had a slide up, and we had, this is kind, and there isn't really a specific priority, but the population balance is very important. So you can't make sure all the HOAs are, in their own districts and then not look at the population. So I think everyone understands that, but population balance and contiguous and compact are kind of those have to happen. And then preserving communities of interest, preserving natural boundaries, all of those things are can be in tension with each other. Do you keep this kind of area here inside the HOA because it's on that side of the highway as well? Or, how do you kind of make decisions about which side, which blocks to move to which districts? And I think that's kind of what this process is in an ideal world, we would get to keep all the communities in their own districts and, get to keep that total deviation under 10%, which we have to do, but, maybe we'll get it to 3% or maybe we'll get it to 7%. But yeah, that's really the conversations I think we want to have in these workshops. And why we want to hear from communities specifically about why they should be, included in one district. It all kind of plays into it, but yeah, it's tough. The priorities kind of come up in these discussions. And I think that's the work that you all are going to be doing, over the next 4 sessions is really figuring out, what are the priorities for the city, and what's that give and take. So no easy answers, and sometimes they're in conflict with each other, so it's tough. But the idea is that we take all of this information and create some scenario maps that satisfy the criteria, the legal criteria, and then we might have different types of scenarios. And this is, we haven't worked on this part of the process, but you can have a scenario that takes District 1 and 2, and instead of splitting them north-south, splits them east-west. That's a scenario. You can have a scenario where, Sun City is all one district, and that's a scenario. And then you see how the rest of it kind of plays out around that. And that's an option. And these are things that we kind of put forward to, the public for comment on them as well. And then eventually the city decides on, the best kind of map that we've been able to come up with. But yeah, I think a lot of this workshop work is trying to figure that out.
Hey,
hopefully that roundabout answers.
yeah, well, how will our changes that we, ultimately end up with practically affect the population or each district differently than than in its previous model.
So how will it affect populations that are moving from one district to another?
Yes.
I think mostly just how people feel represented is which is why there's a really big focus on communities of interest this go round. That these communities are being split into two smaller subgroups and then being represented by two different people. But I think that that's where, you'll see when we put scenario maps out, usually people aren't too interested in the process in the beginning, potentially. But once you're saying, here's what we could do, then you start to hear from the communities like, hey, I'm moving districts. I don't want to. And that's when you kind of start to hear that feedback from the community. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, Kate, on that point too, if someone is moved from one district to another district, there may be a gap in time where that individual is actually able to vote for a city council member representing that district because they are cycled. So currently next year we have districts 1 and 2 that will be going to election. And in the previous election, it was 3, 4, and 5. And so if you get moved theoretically from district 2 to district 5 or whatever it is, you could miss a cycle and not be able to vote for a council member.
Thanks, Christine.
We do have a hand raised in the public. If I could call on Eric Curlin. Go ahead, please. Eric, you there? You'll need to unmute yourself.
Unmute. So can you hear me, Gwen?
Yes, thank you.
Great. So just a bit of information because I was involved in the mapping 2 years ago. And you may notice that the line that kind of separated, we called it kind of the northern part of Lincoln and the southern part of Lincoln was the Auburn Ravine. So that was kind of the natural boundary. So you can see kind of how that curves. So 3, 4, and 5 kind of fell south of Auburn Ravine and 1 and 2 fell north of Auburn Ravine. So just kind of a data point there. And like was mentioned before, at least for kind of the 3 southern districts that Christine mentioned were kind of being voted on, the thought was there were kind of 3 big clumps. One was Sun City, Lincoln Hills. The next clump was kind of 12 Bridges / Vadera. And then the other clump was more the Lincoln Crossing, which is 3. And what you'll find when you work on these maps is then it comes down to population balancing that starts to cause all the kind of shrinking Sun City, Lincoln Hills, moving things around, looking at major roads. You'll see that, for Sun City, Lincoln Hills and 12 Bridges, that a lot of that separation falls along some of the major roads that are within Lincoln Hills. So just kind of some information, a little history in terms of what was done, 2 years ago. But I had a couple of quick questions for Kate, kind of
Yes.
tactical questions. So I've been playing around with it. And once you go in and you kind of make some changes and check boxes, kind of the coloring scheme for the entire map kind of disappears. What are you actually clicking to kind of get it back to fully colored?
Gotcha. So if you do something like select these,
Yeah.
All you have to do is click outside of that area. So if you click, over here, then it'll kind of unselect everything. If you click any, I've got my select tool on here. So if I click anything in here, it's going to select these, pieces that I'm clicking on. But if I select outside the map, it will unselect the whole map. Yep.
The other thing was council members. So I know, there's a lot of discussion around, do you make boundaries, council members, how does it impact people, et cetera. But I know 2 years ago, you were able to go in and actually see where existing council members kind of sat, such that as people look to make decisions on boundaries, et cetera, just so that people know, hey, are they in a situation where, a boundary change is going to cause 2 existing council members to now be in one district, in which case they would then compete against one another and leave another one open. Is that something you can kind of incorporate for this exercise?
Just gonna let you answer, Christine.
Yeah, no, I think that's a data point that we can certainly provide. You could provide, I guess, what voting precinct that they're in. When the council specifically adopted this independent redistricting commission, a lot of the conversation from the dais was about the fact that they didn't want their districts gerrymandered, for better lack of a better word, to protect a seat. So, I mean, it's something obviously that can be considered by the commission. The commission, they're the ultimate decider on this map. But there was conversation from the dais that that was not how they didn't want their districts to be gerrymandered just in order to protect a seat.
Great, thanks. And the last question is, the satellite view did not work for me, so I don't know if that's something that I'm doing. And again, that was more to see if there were any natural boundaries, that made sense when you look at it from a satellite view, but that wasn't working when I played with that, Kate, so.
We'll look into that too. And I have your name on my desk. I think about saving maps as well. So hopefully, and I will email you when I get that information out, I'll email you back about that too. But we've been working on that today, but we'll look into that, and that total deviation should have updated as well. So I think there's probably a link missing at the moment.
And I think the total deviation is the separation between the smallest number and the largest number.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it does. It looks like it's fine because between 3 and 4. Okay. You're right.
Right. So when you changed 1 and 2, it didn't change.
It didn't do enough. Yeah. Okay, great.
I'm
great.
thinking
well,
that that total deviation should be 10 or lower. That's the target.
Yes, that's the goal. Yeah, you're right, because the biggest difference is between 3 and 4. So when I fixed 1 and 2, it didn't change anything. So, but it for the purposes of this group, the fact that we can basically balance between 1 and 2, and like you're saying, that ravine that splits 1 and 2 and 3, 4, and 5, if we're able to balance between 1 and 2 and keep that divide, that kind of geographic divide, and then also then balance between 3, 4, and 5, and kind of do, look at it in 2 pieces, that might make things a lot easier, because then you're not trying to, move from 3 to 2 or 2 to 4, so just interesting about the ravine, because I think that might actually make our jobs easier here. So
if I can interrupt, I really appreciate Eric being on this call and giving the background, because that was a question of one of the commissioners to get the background of the map that was adopted. And Eric was the member of the public that submitted that map. So that is the background for our current districts. And all of his questions stem from using the redistricting tool, the mapping tool. So I really appreciate him asking those questions and being involved this go around. So I don't know, Eric, if you had any other additional comments that you'd like to make.
Yeah, I guess when I was in, and I think I had put together like 7 different scenarios that ultimately at least 2 years ago, the city council decided, which of the 7 they ended up going with. But I live in District 5. So I'm more familiar with that area. So for me, kind of the Lincoln Crossing, Sun City, Lincoln Hills, and then Madera 12 Bridges, kind of generally familiar with some of that. But like Districts 1 and 2, that's the area where there wasn't really any input there. So people didn't really understand what made most sense there with, let's say, the communities of interest, et cetera. So, the different scenarios that were put forth 2 years ago, one was kind of that north-south view, which is what you see. Another view at the time was kind of more of an east-west, splitting that. So there's a lot of different ways to cut it, and it just comes down to population and kind of playing with it. But so anyone from 1 and 2, your input on how the communities are set up, or is anything really crazy or out of place, that I think would really help the commissioners.
Thank you. So one of the commissioners, looks like Felipe has his hand raised. Please go ahead.
almost forgot my question. I was, yeah, based on Eric's last comment regarding the commissioners and consideration, I wanted to make sure that we all understood, am I understanding correctly, we're not supposed to give consideration to any political standing or any kind of political considerations?
Yes, that's my understanding. Christine, I don't know if you have more thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, you can't, you cannot consider trying to make, a Republican district versus a Libertarian district versus a Democrat district, because you have to keep your precincts together. So you can't chop up a precinct, a voting precinct. And then again, just to reiterate, the council from the dais was, I think, pretty clear in their direction that they were hopeful that this commission would be independent. I would not try to gerrymander a district just to protect the seat of a council member.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, Kate, I don't know if you had any other slides. Oh, it looks like Stephen got Commissioner Olcott. Go ahead.
I had a question for Eric. On the map, the magenta portion of District 4 crosses Lincoln Boulevard. Was that just to reduce the population in District 3?
That was one of it. Again, it came down to kind of balancing. So we knew District 3 had to be less. And it was either kind of taking like District 2, the green part, and encroaching in on it, or taking Lincoln, Sun City, Lincoln Hills, and crossing over Lincoln Boulevard. So that's what it was. It was kind of balancing the population. And that was kind of, I think that's Ferrari Ranch. That was kind of like a major road, and it seemed like a good section to kind of carve out. But that's the reason, to balance the population.
Okay, thank you.
Deviation. Yeah.
So Kate, can you click on the far left green district? There's yeah. So if you kind of go out of click back on it so you can see the outline of that. Yeah. Just click on it. There you go.
Gotcha.
See how that that's what you're dealing with for each census block. So you might come into play with some weird looking districts that you need to be contiguous, so you can't really cut the bottom half from the top. They need to be one. So that's kind of, and Eric found that out when he was playing with the southern districts. He was doing focus mainly on that, but you'll find that you might have those issues. So I just wanted to point that out, because you will have some weird looking census blocks like that. So I don't see any other public comments. Do we have any commissioner questions?
I have one. Voting precincts, you mentioned that, and you can't split those. How do we go about with an overlay, or do we have to take that into consideration?
So I think voting precincts, you can split, is my understanding, but we wouldn't want to. We might look at where incumbents live within a district, so we're not lumping two incumbents in the same district together, is my understanding. But I think voting precincts, I'm not sure, Christine, if you have more thoughts on how those might fit into what we're trying to prioritize. I don't know if Christine might not be there at the moment. Yeah.
And I think when Christine was saying precincts, she might have been meaning the census blocks.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely can't split whole blocks.
Yeah,
so
you can.
Big ones that we have to include the whole block because that's the lowest level that we know who lives there. So.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. So I think the next, unless you had anything, Kate, was the discussion items.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think just, we went through communities of interest and demographics. And, yeah, just the discussion of, of districts, and if folks, I just wanted to make sure that there was space, if folks wanted to bring up anything now, for people to consider, if you have a specific community in your district that would like to stay together. If you are hearing from folks in Sun City that they want to stay together, just have a space for any more conversation. I know we've had some questions, but just in case there was anything anyone wanted everyone else to know before we start, working on maps that you'd like to have people keep in mind.
And I know that at our last meeting, Sun City was mentioned as, could you keep that as one? Can you highlight, if you just go to that HOA as one and get the number? I can't remember exactly, but I thought it exceeded the ideal population.
It is 10,080.
Right.
So technically it exceeds it, but only by 30, which is not a lot.
Right.
So technically you could incorporate all of those blocks into one district. And what we do, to select these blocks is if the block falls inside of the HOA boundary, then we consider it in the HOA. So you can see these two blocks over here are technically within the HOA boundary, but they wouldn't be able to be included because it's not contiguous, or we would have to take this whole kind of piece over here, that's not being shown right now, but we'd have to take this big block here and also incorporate that in, and that has 574 people in it. So that's too much to incorporate that in. So figuring out what the boundary is that makes sense with the existing blocks, would be something to work on, but it is within that range. So it's possible.
Thank you.
And on that point, there was a lot of discussion when we initially did this 2 years ago about somehow trying to keep the Old Town downtown in one district. And I think Eric can speak to that, but I think it was really difficult because a lot of the Old Town downtown it's commercial, it's not residential. And so despite, I think, everyone's best efforts to try to accommodate that request, it just didn't, the numbers didn't balance out.
All right. If there's no further discussion, I think Gwen will probably take the screen back.
Yeah, and the next slide was just basically that our Brown Act presentation has been postponed until next meeting, which is on the 26th. Stephen, did you have another question, or was your hand just still up?
No, I did have another question. I mean, that model you showed where all of Sun City's together, the problem with that is that District 5 becomes even more underpopulated, correct? Even though this District 4 would be fine, but District 5 would need to have a significant population added to it.
Yeah, and you have to pull probably from District 3, because District 2, you can imagine District 5 would be coming up and around and going way north, and it would look very gerrymandered, to do it that way, or just like a weird shape. So it would probably be District 3. If you were going to do that scenario, you'd be pulling from District 3, which is over, and trying to figure out which areas of District 3 would you pull into 5. Right. So, but that would be a scenario. And I think we have 3 or 4 scenarios, that we are going to be developing that are, kind of different things for folks to look at. Do you like the Sun City scenario? Do you like the, scenario B that has these feet, these kind of these lines? And so it's a way for people to look at, well, if we kept Sun City together, it would look something like this. What do people think? And getting those different options together for folks to look at.
So just to clarify, your company is going to be giving us some models in addition to whatever we as commissioners and the public come up with.
Yep, I believe that is part of, we're able to, kind of take the public comment that comes after the workshops as well, and create those maps that take that into consideration. But I'll have to look with Gwen and see like what the timeline is for that, and what the exactly how many edits we might be making or things like that.
And for the commissioners' ease of mind, Flow Analytics will also be evaluating the legality of any map that's submitted to them. So you'll see, similar to what you've just been seeing in this presentation with any map, it'll very clearly spell out for you whether this map complies with the law or doesn't. And so you can take that as a kind of a way to filter which maps you really ultimately want to have some debate and public testimony on.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. And then Gwen, just real quickly on Brown Act, I do want to just make a quick statement. We will, because of some recent changes in the Brown Act having to do with AB 361 and our council electing not to adopt a resolution that would enable us to continue to have all of the commissioners via Zoom without going through some very hefty posting requirements, notice requirements, having to require public comment at whatever location remotely that you're in attendance at. We will be going back to in-person meetings as best I can tell. And so at that meeting, I'll be giving you a more robust presentation on the requirements of the Brown Act. But just short, Brown Act has to do with how many of you can gather and discuss items that may come before you. So it would be a majority of your body of 11. So no more than 5 of you can gather for coffee and talk about maps. And then also about different types of circular meetings and the ways that electeds or appointeds can try to get around the Brown Act requirements. But you'll get a much more fuller discussion about those rules and regulations at your next meeting. Looks like Rayanne has a question.
Yeah, I have a question right now related to that. Until we get more into that, what can we say and what can we not say to either other commissioners or to members of the public?
Well, I think at this point, we're in a pretty safe position because we don't have any maps for you to talk about, right? So you're,
Okay.
Ultimately it would be if a majority of you kind of got together behind the scenes and tried to come to a deal about a map, that would be a violation of the Brown Act. All of our discussions that require action would need to be in an open and public setting, which is why we'll be going back to in-person meetings under the Brown Act. But certainly at this point in time, I would say talk freely about it, what you've learned, encourage members of the community to go onto the website and start playing with the tool and submitting maps. And, they can freely share with you their concerns about what are communities of interest and what HOAs they want to see stay together. I mean, that's all certainly within the realm of the community communicating with you. It's what I'm talking about is if 6 of you get together and decide, all right, we're going to make sure and do our best that all of whatever these communities of interest are end up in the same district. You don't want to be making decisions before you have all of the information and all of the public testimony.
Right, but it's not a problem if we talk to each other at the other commissioners at this point in generalities or just thoughts.
Right,
No.
right. Because there's really nothing,
no
there's really
specific
nothing
map.
before you. Right, there's nothing really before you at this time. Just
Okay,
don't get used
just
to it.
wanted to verify that.
Just don't get used to it.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the Brown Act presentation at the next meeting, which will scare you to death, and we'll go from there.
So, so the next meeting is October 26th. Like I said, if anybody would like one-on-one assistance with the tool, feel free to get in touch with me. We do have a member on staff that got some really good training from Kate and is going to be our go-to person in our GIS department. So other than that, if I don't have any other comments, we don't have anything further to discuss today.
I have one question. Is the next meeting public or is it Zoom?
So the 26th should be in public. Like I said, we're working to see if we can get a space where we have computers to get some hands-on. But we don't know exactly yet, so just stay tuned.
Right,
Okay.
and we are trying to make it, so the in-person has to do with the members of the commission.
Right.
We are trying to make it a hybrid meeting so that members of the public can participate remotely. And obviously Kate is calling in and our consultant will be zooming in to participate in the meeting as well.
Okay.
When I just had one question, you said 26th, but I have 21st on the
Oh, I'm
website.
sorry. Am I saying the wrong date? I keep doing that.
I have another thing.
You're
on
right, the
26th as well.
21st.
I have so many things.
Thank
to do.
you.
So,
Yes,
okay,
I'm
great.
sorry. I did that the last
Like,
meeting
just wanted
too.
to check. Okay, 21st. Okay.
Yeah, October 21st at 3 p.m. So with that, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting if I don't have any further hands or comments. Thank you all.
Thank you.